My name is Justin Baldwin. I'm from Justin Winery, and as you all know, Paso Robles enjoys the same history that most of the California wine country does, with the Spaniards coming up with the missionaries 200 years ago and planting grapes here. In fact, the grapes were planted here before they were in Sonoma and Napa, because the missionaries went from south to north, and so we had a slight advantage, or a head start, if you will, in that regard. They were followed by our Mennonite friends, who habited most of the land around here and came in the mid-1800s, and were fortunate in those days to discover mercury out the mines out west of us here, and sustain themselves for a number of years. But as the quicksilver ore that to use to extract gold during the California Gold Rush and the Alaskan Gold Rush, as that petered out, there was less need to, no real financial support for them, and those that had money bought out the others, and we find ourselves surrounded by huge parcels of land tracts out here that those original settlers homesteaded and built out on. Then we had, just before Prohibition, we had some enterprising people come in and try to put wineries in, or vineyards in rather, and I'm sure maybe not sure, but you might have heard the Igor Paderewski story on the old Chimney Rock Ranch and how that got started. And then post-Prohibition, there was another wave, if you will. The Pizenti Winery in York Mountain, some others came into existence. And then we sort of went to sleep around here for a long period of time, till the 70s or so, and people like Adelaida and others started the ball rolling again. And even on the east side of town, things got going. And then by the time the 80s rolled around, people like me and others came in, and we started going. But that may sound like there's a lot, but there were, in 1981, when I got started, there were 10 wineries in Paso Robles. That's it. I'm going to put that in perspective with you today. There's 200 wineries almost here in Paso Robles, and we are now the third largest wine region in the United States in terms of number of wineries. It's a big change in a fairly short period of time, to put it mildly, down there. The history of our group is perhaps even more interesting. We started this group over 10 years ago, and we, as some of the people up here and some others who unfortunately can't be or aren't with us anymore, with the express purpose to share what we do with people. We were far out in terms of where we were located, and other reasons, I guess, as well, but certainly geographically we were far out. And in those days, the Paso Robles Vintners and Growers Association, which today is the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance, was in existence, but it really wasn't doing much in terms of promoting our products, and we decided to take it upon ourselves to initiate that process, and that's what we did, hosting much smaller than this, small tastings, seminars, etc., and working together here locally to more in the direct market side of our product. Well, where do we fit in? Where does the Far Out Wineries fit into Paso Robles and what's happening across the nation today? There are 15 of us. You see all 15 wineries represented here today of the Far Out Wineries. But as I mentioned, there are 200 wineries in Paso Robles. In the whole United States today, there are 4,200 wineries across the United States. And again, putting that in perspective, there's a lot of wineries. We find ourselves out here at the far western borders. We are, as you can tell, we're characterized by hillside vineyards. You don't have to look far to see that. These sedimentary type soils with high levels of clay. If you've ever been here when it rains, you know there's a lot of clay out here. It sticks to everything there possibly is. Average elevation's 900 feet and higher. Limited amount of abundant or available water, but lots of rain. And I'm sure you'll hear more about these as the speakers talk to you about their various properties today. Less than 10% of the acreage in Paso Robles is over here on the west side. The other 90% is on the east side of Paso Robles, and you can take that as dividing line as the Salinas River or the Highway 101 corridor if you want to see where those are. Put that within another perspective, our total area is 600,000 acres, the Paso Robles appellation in total. Our friends up in Napa have 200,000 acres, Sonoma around 300,000 acres. Within that 600,000 acres, there's 27,000 acres of wine grapes, so a small percentage of the total. Again, to put that in perspective, if you want to go up to Napa, you'll find them with about 45,000 acres of planted grapes, and Sonoma at about 60,000. 200 wineries here. Napa has 450. Sonoma a little bit over 300. Again, keeping that all in perspective. We, at that size, however, are one big appellation. We have no sub or smaller mini appellations within that, but that's changing. One of the things that we're doing right now is taking Paso Robles into the same level that we find our neighbors and friends up in the north counties, and that is to divide within the Paso Robles appellation ourselves into sub-appellations. This appellation, for example, will be called the Adelaida District. And there are about 12 sub-appellations that we're working on right now. It has yet to be filed with the Treasury Tax Bureau, but that's coming up. And you can look for us, of course, within 600,000 acres to differentiate some of what we're doing here. And you'll see a lot of differences among the panel here in our wines this morning as well. But within our whole area, we thought it made sense to recognize that there is diversity within what we're doing. Now, within what we're doing, again, to put it in perspective, of all the grapes grown here in Paso Robles, only 30% of the grapes, I'm talking the entire county, are made into wine that says Paso Robles on the label. The other 70% are sold outside of this appellation. They go away. I can tell you, I don't think there's a vineyard up here or any members in our Far Out group who sell grapes that go outside of the appellation or to wineries that don't use the name Paso Robles. So we have a long ways to grow within the appellation. This western area, the Far Out area, we think we're grown, we're there. We're in sort of a different boat, if you will, and all that. I guess an effect of all that, it has to do with pricing. If you look at the price of grapes, most of the wine grapes represented here, Cabernet Sauvignon, for example, sells for 1/4 what the same varietal will sell for in Napa. Syrah and Zinfandel sell for 40 cents on the dollar of what you'd find the same varietal selling for in the Napa markets. Our growth here has been fairly dramatic. Not only has this organization doubled in size in the last 5 years and more on the way, but all of Paso Robles has doubled just in the last 5 years. So you sort of see this geometric progression of how we're going, and we're going rapidly. We're getting one new winery application per week here in the county, and with no end in sight at this stage of the game. Lastly, on a national scope, I wanted to put it in perspective why this organization exists. And that is because some of the ability for us to distribute our wines is somewhat limited. Those 4,200 wineries I mentioned to you that went from several hundred 20-some years ago to over 4,000 are offset by the opposite thing happening within the wholesale distribution side of the wine business today. When I first started, there were over 6,000 wine wholesalers in the United States. Today, there's a little over 400. So as we've grown, the wholesalers have contracted and gotten smaller and smaller. The numbers of wineries have gotten bigger and bigger. National legislation, you may be aware, the Supreme Court ruling allows much easier for a shipment for us outside of California. All that sort of the perfect storm coming together to create a group like the Far Out Winery to allow us to bring our product directly to you for whether we have to in some ways, to get faced, but also because we want to. A lot of the wines that you'll try today and the wines that we produce are very small in production, and wholesalers probably most likely wouldn't pick them up. They're not large enough to really commercially get out in many, many markets across the United States. So that's a little bit of backdrop about Paso Robles, the Far Out Winery history, what's happening in the national marketplace.